All right, paragraph 6C of the 1 to 4 family contract. What is a survey? In another video, I went through a survey and what it is. This is where we need to indicate what happens with the survey. So why would you need a survey? If you're getting a loan, the lender is going to require you to have a survey. And in the other video, as I said, it's the footprint of the land and where all the buildings and the boundary lines on the property are. Okay. A buyer would want to know that because if I'm buying something, I want to make sure that the fence lines line up with the boundary lines because many times they don't. So I highly encourage, and you as an agent need to encourage your buyer to have a survey on the property. If they don't want one, we probably want a statement from them stating that they don't require a survey. If they're paying cash, they may not want one. I want to make sure that we get that in writing from them. Okay. Now, here on the contract, there are three options here when it comes to the survey. Okay. The paragraph 1 is if we're using an existing survey. Paragraph 2 is if the buyer is going to buy a new survey. Paragraph 3 is if the seller is going to be buying the new survey. So let's do the easy one first. So if we're going to choose paragraph 3, if the seller is going to be providing the survey, then we just need to negotiate the number of days that the seller is going to get that survey delivered to the buyer. Paragraph 2, if the buyer is going to get the survey, we need to negotiate the number of days the buyer is going to have to receive that survey. Okay. Now here's the caveat. Here's something that we need to understand. It takes some time for the surveys to come in, right? And there is a cost to it. A residential survey today at the end of 2025 is going to cost between $450 and $550. Typically, it could be more. And it could take anywhere from 7 to 15 days for that survey to come in. So before you put anything here, right, in these blanks, you need to know how long is it going to take for surveys to come in if the buyer or the seller is going to order it. And if it's taking 7 days, I always add at least 3 days to that. Things happen, right? So if it's 7 days, I'm going to put 10 days. I want to estimate 10 days for that survey to come in. The other thing is the buyer is going to be doing inspections. So if there's an option period in place, let's just say for 10 days, then I really don't want to order that survey until we're past the option period because I don't want the buyer to pay for an inspection, an option period, potentially the appraisal, and now a survey. When that inspection comes back and the buyer goes, oh, I don't want to buy this because of whatever reason. But now they've already bought a survey. So typically we're going to wait to order the survey until after the inspection period, after the option period is finished. With that in mind, if it's 10-day option period and it's also 7 days for a survey to come in, then I'm probably going to put here 20 days just to make sure I have plenty of time for that survey to come in. I'm going to use that same logic with the seller. If the seller is ordering it, I'm going to use that same logic with the seller. Because if the seller doesn't want to buy a survey, I want to wait until the option period is finished before the survey is ordered. Okay. Now, a couple of things here. When the buyer is ordering the survey, if we put 20 days, if the survey doesn't come in, the contract is going to state buyer is deemed to receive the survey on the date of the actual receipt for the date specified in this paragraph, whichever is earlier. So what that means is if they put 20 days, but the survey doesn't come in on the 20th day, it's as though the buyer has received it. That's important when we get into paragraph D, which we'll explain later, okay? Because they don't have anything to object to if they don't have the survey, okay? If the buyer doesn't get the survey, that's not going to be a reason for the buyer to terminate under paragraph 2B of the third-party financing addendum because it wasn't obtained. If there's a lender involved, that means the lender's not going to fund it without a survey. And since the buyer can't terminate because of not receiving the survey, then the buyer would be in breach of contract. Make sure the buyer understands that. If there's a lender involved and paragraph 2 is checked, there's no option. They have to get a survey. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here, and then I'll come back to the next video and explain number 1.